Cham Vishnupad Param Sivrachik Chari Shtottara Shat is Divine Grace Abhajna in the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Krantarachima Bhaktam Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nitya Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 21, Text 1. So the chapter is titled Conversation between Manu and Kardama. Vidura vacha Svayambhuvasya cha manor Svayambhuvasya cha manor Vamsha paramasammataha Vamsha paramasammataha Katyatam bhagavan yatra Katyatam bhagavan yatra Maitune naidire pracha Maitune naidire pracha Vidura vacha Svayambhuvasya cha manor Vamsha paramasammataha Katyatam bhagavan yatra Maitune naidire pracha Vidura vacha Svayambhuvasya cha manor Vamsha paramasammataha Katyatam bhagavan yatra Tune naidire pracha. Word-to-word translation. Vidura vacha. Vidura said, Svayambhuvasya, of Svayambhuva, cha, and Manoho, of Manu, Vamshaha, the dynasty, Parama, most, Sammataha, esteemed, Katyatam, kindly describe, Bhagavan, O worshipful sage, Yatra, in which, Maitunena, through sexual intercourse, Idire, multiplied, Prajaha, the progeny. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhijna and the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Vidura said, the line of Svayambhuva Manu was most esteemed. O worshipful sage, I beg you, give me an account of this race, whose progeny multiplied through sexual intercourse. Purport. Regulated sex life to generate good population is worth accepting. Actually, Vidura was not interested in hearing the history of persons who merely engaged in sex life, but he was interested in the progeny of Svayambhuva Manu, because in that dynasty good devotee kings appeared, who protected the subjects very carefully with spiritual knowledge. By hearing the history of their activities, therefore, one becomes more enlightened. An important word used in this connection is paramasammataha, which indicates that the progeny created by Svayambhuva Manu and his sons was approved of by great authorities. In other words, sex life for creating exemplary population is acceptable to all sages and authorities of Vedic scripture. Om Akyanatimirandasya Kanhanjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sachevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sate Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Vancha Kalpadarabhashcha Kripa Sindhya Bhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to this morning's Bhagavatam class. So we're starting a new chapter. After having heard in quite detail and with quite some intricacies of how Lord Brahma is engaging in the secondary creation. And so now, and there already we heard actually this topic which is coming up today as well, but today more from the other, like from the opposite angle, namely that of sex life. In the previous chapter we heard about kind of from the demoniac side, how they were imagining the twilight born from Lord Brahma as a beautiful woman and their fantasies in relation to that. But today we hear how even great sages, such as he exemplified between Vidura and Maitreya, they are interested in how this is used as to create good progeny, as in the case of Svayambhu Manu and his descendants. So that's what we see here. And so Prabhupada starts off basically the Prabhupada with quoting, like we know Krishna himself tells in Bhagavad Gita about how this kind of sex life is actually not only religious. Krishna says it's a representation of himself. Dharma virodhi bhutshu kamosmi paratashapa. That is me. And when I looked at this verse yesterday, it struck me that before at least I think I never noticed or I forgot that actually that same verse, Krishna, because like as we hear in today's Prabhupada, also Prabhupada tells like that those good devotee kings appear to protect their subjects very carefully with spiritual knowledge. And we know what that does. Protecting with spiritual knowledge is one part of that, is as you know, Prabhupada explains in Bhagavad Gita when discussing this topic, that it is actually the duty of Kshatriyas to protect their progeny from lust, from all this lower nature, which we naturally, if we don't have spiritual knowledge, we succumb to. So, but even in that verse, I noticed that in Bhagavad Gita 7:11, that Krishna actually, the first two lines kind of are related to that directly. So it says, Balam balavatam chaham kama raga vivarchitam. So, and then dharma virodhu bhutisho kamasmi paratashapa. So first, before telling how Krishna is this kind of sex life for the sake of creating good progeny, Krishna tells that also what kind of strength he is, what bala. He says, Balam balavatam cham kama raga vivarchitam. I am that strength which is used for or possessed by someone without karma and raga, without material desires or lust and attachment. And so that is the qualification of a real kshatriya, of a real king or administrator, leader. That they don't because otherwise the tendency is that if you get power, then your false ego just gets puffed up more and you exploit the others. But a real leader is one who is, first of all, has to be free of that. Otherwise, his having bala, his having strength is not the real strength, as Krishna explains here, because it's then only creating disturbance. So, and yeah, we know obviously how, like nowadays, if someone hears something like, oh, protecting from lust, they, can't relate at all to it. They would rather think, it's a good thing, right? You actually, material life, we are so devoid of real happiness that we hanker for those moments when whatever kind of emotion comes up that I can feel something. So whether that is especially lust. So it's as soon as we go on the street, we see how everything is geared to that, to just increase the lust in our heart more and more. But then they might say like, well, how can you say that the leaders should protect us from that? So that Krishna explains that quite strongly in Bhagavad Gita as well. Like one famous verse is Kamesha Krodesha Rajaguna Samutbhavaha, that this lust that is born from the contact with the mode of passion and later transformed into wrath. And it is Mahashano Mahapapma. It is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyanam Iha Vyarinam. So Vidya, please notice, O Arjuna, obviously especially talking to all of us, because Arjuna, he's just playing the part for our benefit. So yes, it is not only something little bit unwanted. No, it's like the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. As we know, it's the root principle of material life, to keep us bound here, shackled by these desire for sex life. And so I briefly want to now go through one famous pastime towards the end of 9th canto, where there's one beautiful, Srimad Bhagavatam is full with examples of such perfect kings who actually did protect their citizens, not only on the gross level, but especially also on a subtle level, by giving them the best facilities to ensure their spiritual progress, and automatically thus protect them from lust and these lower desires. So, and one of those perfect kings, mentioned in 9th canto, the 9th canto, then here Vidura is asking about Svayambhu Manu, who is, because we're just talking about a creation from the very beginning. So and Svayambhu Manu, as he says, Svayambhu, his name says that he's born from Lord Brahma, who is also called Svayambhu. We discussed it recently as well. So he is the first Manu, and then but now we are living in Vaivasvata Manvantar, in the 7th Manu. And so 9th canto then discusses about this Manvantar, which is a bit more recent history for us to relate to. And so first discusses the Sun dynasty, then where of course also Lord Ramachandra appeared, and then leading up to the 10th canto, we're talking about Krishna himself. Then about the Moon dynasty where he appeared. And so one of those kings there is King Rantidev. And he was such a great devotee that he was completely free of any kind of selfish desires. So much so that he was, whoever came at whatever time, he will always give whatever he could to make that person happy. And so at one time it so happened that, and not just him, but his whole family was like that. So one time, he and his family, they were fasting for 48 days, complete fast. Not even water. So, then on the 48th day, one Brahmana came, someone gave some donation of nicely prepared food, in ghee and everything, and like a moderate quantity, just to satisfy him and his family, and along with water. So, and then when they would have been about to break the fast, then one Brahmana came and asked for charity, and so without hesitation, Maharaj Rantadev immediately gave him like half of the portion of the food and water, and so satisfied the Brahmana. And then again, when the Brahmana left, when he would have been about to break the fast with his family, then I think next a Shudra came, and again the king gave him the portion of it and satisfied the Shudra. And then same thing again, next time came a guest surrounded by several dogs, it's mentioned. And so, and he was saying, my dogs are very hungry, like that. Also. So then Maharaj Rantadev just gave him whatever he had left to satisfy that person along with his dogs, with all the food he had left. And then all that he had left was a little bit of water. Water just enough for one person, so just for the king himself. And so when he finally would have been about to satisfy his thirst at least by this little water, then came a Chandala, a dog eater, who very piteously cried out to the king that he's suffering from thirst, and if he could have little water. So I'll just read a few texts there, because I can't speak as nicely as it's written in Bhagavatam, the grace of Prabhupada, translated. So that person appealed to the king, "O king, although I am low-born," so that's 9th canto, chapter, I think 22 or 20? 21, 921. Text 10. "O king, although I am low-born, kindly give me some drinking water." And aggrieved at hearing the pitiable words of the poor fatigued Chandala, Maharaj Rantadev spoke the following nectarian words. "I do not pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the 8 perfections of mystic yoga, nor for salvation from repeated birth and death. I want only to stay among all the living entities and suffer all distresses on their behalf, so that they may be freed from suffering." So that, as Prabhupada discusses in the purport, that very much reminds us also of another devotee who amazingly exemplifies this same mood in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is Vasudev Dutt, who tells to Mahaprabhu himself that he wants to, even more extreme, that he wants all the living entities in the universe, all their sinful reactions he wants to take on him, so that the Lord may be able to deliver them. And that's the extreme compassion a pure devotee feels on behalf of the Supreme Lord as the all-loving Father of all living entities. And then the Maharaj Rantadev explains in contrast that for him, for a devotee like him, it is not at all an austerity actually to sacrifice things of his own sense gratification for the sake of others. So in text 13 he tells, does it start? Yeah. Kshutrit shamogatra paripramascha dainyam klamashoka vishadamoha sarve nivrita kripanasya chantor chichi visharchiva chalarpananme. Then Maharaj Rantadeva explains that kshut, hunger, trit, thirst, shrama, fatigue, and gatra, paripram. So, obviously from fasting for so long, him and all his family, they were extremely hungry, thirsty, the body became fatigued. But so much so that gatra paripramascha, that the body was trembling. But so all of that, and then dainyam, poverty, namyan, klama, distress, shoka, lamentation, vishada, moroseness, and vishada, moha, and illusion all of that, Maharaj Rantadeva says, is sarvenivrita, all of that gets wiped out. By how? Because he, this Chandala, this Kripanasya Chantra, this poor living entity who appealed to him with chichivishva, with a desire to live, simply because Maharaj Rantadeva maintained the life of this person by chalarpaname, by his offering this water. Which is quite paradoxical, because materially speaking, like if he keeps more and more fasting, not even drinking water, then he would suffer more and more. But Maharaj Rantadeva is saying that simply by doing it, by offering this water, he became freed from all of that. So this shows that obviously a great devotee like him, he is not on the material platform. And so he understands that not only is he not the body, but every living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. And so seeing in that way, him getting an opportunity to serve another living entity, whom he considers a devotee of Krishna, that ultimately everyone is like that, as we know, that's the vision of an Uttama Adhikari, that him getting an opportunity to serve another devotee like that, then his life is all perfect. He's freed from any material distresses, because then he engages actually on the spiritual platform. And so that's Maharaj Rantadeva. Also actually Prabhupada in Iceland, Prabhupada into text 11, so when Maharaj Rantadeva started speaking to the Chandala, he explained, because a word used there is that he spoke to this aggrieved Chandala with nectarian words and amritam. And Prabhupada explains there that Maharaj Rantadeva, because he was such a great devotee, he, as I said, not only on the external platform could he provide so nicely for all the persons, but also, more important, internally. And in this case, Prabhupada explains that aside from rendering bodily service to an aggrieved person, by his words alone, Maharaj Rantadeva could save the life of anyone who might hear him. So even if he wouldn't have given the water, the Chandala, if simply hearing such nectarian words, he feels so fulfilled and so amazing. And so then further it's mentioned that being such an amazing devotee, so anyone who followed the principles of King Rantadeva also became a pure devotee in his kingdom. So that is perfect leadership. And so now going further a little bit on this topic of sex. We know, like we heard, for example, last Sunday, I believe, from Mataji, how it is important to have a proper philosophical understanding, how to look at at the opposite sex. Like she was saying that we should always consider that if we see anything beautiful in the world, including the opposite sex, that it's we should think how beautiful must the Creator be, who is Krishna, and that obviously everything is actually for Krishna's pleasure. And similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, as a 5-year-old boy, he gave like very deep and insightful instructions also on this topic, which is quite amazing also, because it shows that real knowledge doesn't come from experience, as we know, like Guru Maharaj, so in this Amrita Swami Maharaj, he would many times tell this, how like there's, I think, one old English proverb which says that experience is the best teacher, but then nowadays people don't know the second half, which apparently says for a fool doesn't learn another way, or for a fool learns no other way, something like that. So, which actually shows that material energy is not, like very much would always say, has no education department. It's actually, by nature, it is here to bewilder living entities only. And So yeah, and that's why simply experience in material life, it doesn't give real wisdom. Temporarily we might think, yeah, I learned the lesson, but then even if you theoretically might understand, you fall trapped to again engage in that because we know, like discussed recently also this verse by King Yayati Matras Vasratu Hitrava Navivikta Sanopavet Indriya Balavangramo Vidvamsam Apikashati, that even the most learned, they become attracted to the sense objects, they particularly in that regard of sex desire. So it's not possible by mere knowledge in material platform and determination to actually then apply even so-called wisdom. So we see with Prahlad Maharaj, so he shows that it's not as like a 5-year-old boy, how much experience could he have, especially in this regard. But it shows that simply by submissive hearing from authorities, self-realized souls, that is how you get real knowledge, as he did in the womb already of Kayadu, Narad Muni's instructions. And so one of those verses is Yanmaitunadi kriyamere sukham hitocham kando yanena karayori vadukhka dukhkam tripyanti neha kripana pahodukhka bhajam kando tivan manasicham vishaheta dira. Where Prahlad Maharaj says that this pleasure from Maitunadi, from sex and whatever comes along with that, material life is sukham hitucham, it is most insignificant, and it is just like the scratching of, if you have an itch and you scratch it, this momentary relief of thinking, oh wow, yeah, nice. But then what happens as you go on scratching, it only gets worse and worse. Like there's like I heard recently also from my Guru Maharaj how he told one pastime with Prabhupada when he apparently in one time before giving lecture while singing Jaya Radha Madhava, there was one devotee standing next to him fanning Prabhupada, and Prabhupada apparently always looked or like kept looking at this devotee, and the devotee was feeling like, am I doing something wrong in my fanning, or like what's happening? Why is he looking at me? And then after finishing singing, Prabhupada again turned to the devotee and pulled up his sleeve and like scratched like that and asked the devotee, how did it go? Or he just told you have an itch, you scratch, and then why do you stop? He asked the devotee. They must be, what? Well, what does Prabhupada mean? And Prabhupada, he answered himself then that you don't stop because you're satisfied. You stop because it's a bloody mess. So, because as we keep scratching, obviously, it only eventually you scratch open your skin and you suffer. And so the devotee was thinking, oh wow, so Prabhupada knows where I'm at. That's what he was saying. I do not say. And so he understood that yes, all pursuing, maintaining this sex desire is all that it gives. The more you do it, the more mess you get. So, and so Prahlad Maharaj, he, as a 5-year-old boy, he's saying that. And then, kanduyanena karayori vadukhka dukhkam, and so in this way it gives only more and more misery. And tripyanti neha kripana, so this kripanas, these miserly souls pursuing that, they can never attain satisfaction, but only get more misery. So, and that is why one who is sober, who is stira, he understands that actually all of that desire and the so-called pleasure you get then from pursuing it, it's simply manasicham, it's simply mental concoction, born of the mind. We see that even within that, like if you consider that, we know like in whatever species, like at least, I mean, some species are there which don't have that, but if whether you're a dog or hog, anything like that, you also enjoy that same pleasure. But from our perspective, it seems like, what can they enjoy? It can't be really. But it's only a mental concoction, whether you, or even within the human body, whether you are in an ugly body, two people who are very ugly, who do that same thing, they get that same sensation as someone gets who has a very beautiful body. But in the mind, you make it up, I'm like in beautiful bodies, you can enjoy that so much. But yeah, that shows it's only manasicham, it's only mental concoction. And so that's why one who is tira, he simply tolerates that urge coming and he doesn't pursue it. But yeah, coming back to the point, so that's a first step, that we have a proper theoretical, philosophical understanding and can preach to ourselves that, yeah, that's all it is, don't, whenever such a thought comes, just push it aside. But still, just that alone is not enough, because we have to actually realize it. And and one way of, and we know it, realizing means through devotional service, which starts through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and so forth. And so that's why there's a kind of a, on the other side, a verse on that topic in the 10th canto then. Very famous also, which Prabhupada would quote many times. Actually, I'll first, which is also quoted in one purport from last time we discussed Maharaj Yati's pastime. So I'll briefly read a little bit from, explain the one purport there. Where Prabhupada, so that's Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 13, where Prabhupada very beautifully explains actually also this whole, how it is puzzling actually in one sense, how it can be like that, but why it is like that. So Prabhupada there, he starts off by quoting one famous verse of Bhagavad Gita, Mama Vamsha Chiva Loke Chiva Bhuta Sanatana Manashashtan Indriyani Prakritistani Karshati. That actually we are all Mama Vamsha, we are all Krishna's thing, we are his parts and parcels. And so Prabhupada is explaining, so although every living entity is part of the Supreme Being, which means we are qualitatively one, as Prabhupada so many times would emphasize. But because of lusty desires, one continuously struggles for so-called betterment of one's economic condition. And like one's economic condition, that means, like Prabhupada then quotes, that connection is given by Rishabdev. We recently heard that verse as well. Pumsastriya mitune bhava metam tayo ridaya krantimaho ato kriya kshetra sutapta vityara chanasya moho yamaham mameti. Where Lord Rishabdev explains that this mitune bhava, this pleasure that a man and female get when they unite, it creates a tayora mito ridare krantimaho, it creates this knot in the heart. And having created that knot, then what happens further? Then ato kriya kshetra sutapta vityara, then comes, after that comes griha, you can you get a home, kshetra with property, sutta, you beget children, apta, you have to get wealth to maintain all of that. Apta, relatives, and vitar, you have to get wealth for that. So that's why here Prabhupada says, for you automatically then mode of passion, then that's why we see all the people are so eager to somehow make money. So that's how although we are parts and parcels of the Lord, how we get into that. And so Prabhupada then further says that to have a satisfied mind, one must give up his heart disease of lusty desires. And then he quotes this heart disease of lusty desires that's explained in 10th Canto, Chapter 33, Text 39, which goes like this: Vikriritam rachavarodyaridam cha Vishnam Shradan vitam noshino yaratavarnayatyan Bhaktim padam bhagavati pradilapya kamam Hridrogamasya pahinoti achirena dhira. Where it is said that actually Vikriritam vrachavadubhyar idam cha Vishnu, that the sporting of the women of Vrindavan, of the gopis, with Krishna, and interestingly the other word is used Vishnu, which is, basically we know Lord Vishnu doesn't dance with the gopis, but it is used to emphasize that that is, Krishna is not an ordinary person, but he is that supreme Lord who is more easily understood as Lord Vishnu. And so hearing of these activities with Shraddha, with faith, Shraddhanvito no Shrinoyat Atavarna Yatya, or describing these, what happens then? Then Bhaktim Param Bhagavati Pradilapya, you attain pure devotional service to the Supreme Lordships. And then doing that, then automatically this Rit Rogam, which is keeping us away from pure devotional service, away from the spiritual world, this Rit Rogam, this heart disease of karma, of material desires, it gradually and quickly, actually, it's mentioned, goes away if we do that. So, but then obviously for that you need to have some kind of solid start in bhakti, because if we still have very strongly this misconception that everything is for our pleasure, then even hearing about those descriptions we get agitated, because we look at it from that the gopis would be ordinary women for us to exploit for our lower desires. But yeah, if we do it in a proper way, then hearing about that frees us from that. And that's all, like Prabhupada, with this verse many times he would also show that how this shows that it's not at all material, those affairs, because otherwise why would Shukadeva Goswami eagerly speak about it, as he explains in that verse, and Mahaprabhu and all those great souls who are completely renounced. And so yeah, now I want to briefly mention a few points from Nectar of Devotion, which I've been reading recently. And we know tomorrow is Radhashtami, so we know Nectar of Devotion is all about the science of devotional service, who is in the highest perfection personified by Srimati Radharani. And so one nice statement in relation to that, what we just discussed directly, is Prabhupada makes there on page 110, that only one who studies Srimad Bhagavatam in the spirit of renunciation can understand the pastimes of the Lord. So, and yeah, in studying Srimad Bhagavatam in the spirit of renunciation, we might think, yeah, okay, we are not fully renounced, we are not pure devotees, we don't have pure love, we still have material desires. But so it means that at least to get some proper understanding of whatever we can, we at least have to have this firm determination that yes, I understand it theoretically, and I also want to only endeavor in that way of knowing that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, not ourselves, and that it is only illusion and only cause of all miseries to think correct in any other way other than seeing to Krishna's enjoyment, and to prolong this heart disease. So, and like, you know, also in terms of so to understand Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, that's the basic point there, and then coming a bit to what's Radhashtami. So whom does Krishna enjoy with? You know, with Srimati Radharani. With we know Radha and Krishna are actually one, and it's explained. Krishna is the summum bonum, so everything comes from him. And so then, but then when, so-called when, does Srimati Radharani appear? Said, when Krishna wanted to enjoy. And then, like my Guru Maharaj would sometimes mention that, okay, when Krishna wanted to enjoy, so was there any time when Krishna didn't want to enjoy? No, obviously he's the supreme enjoyer. He eternally always enjoyed and will keep enjoying in the most perfect and complete way. And so this shows that yes, those spiritual subjects we cannot understand with our material mind of time and space and everything. And but it's just those statements are to give us some kind of idea to relate to. And so there's on page 89 of NOD, there's also a nice statement again coming to this, how through hearing we can overcome this. There Prabhupada says that when one links his ears to give oral reception to the transcendental vibrations, he can quickly become purified. And then he quotes the Garuda Purana, where it's mentioned that conditioned living entity is just like a man unconscious because he was bitten by a snake. And in such an unconscious state can be ended by the sound of a mantra. So similarly, we have been bitten by the snake of Maya and can wake up from it by hearing the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and other transcendental vibrations. And then, but how do we do this hearing? Then in page 133, Prabhupada quotes one famous verse from 325-25, which is Satam Prasangam Mamam Yarya Samvido Bhavantirit Kana Rasayana Kata Tatshoshanadasha Bhagavartmani Shradaratir Bhaktianukramishyati. Sorry, I haven't thought about it for a long time actually. So in this beautiful verse, Lord Kapila Dev explains how it is in the assembly of pure devotees that the Mama Virya, that this full potency comes out of hearing about Krishna. And so Prabhupada there, he nicely explains that, and so that happens only obviously if the speaker also is such a devotee and not a, Prabhupada explains here that a professional speaker cannot impress transcendental ecstasy within the hearts of the audience. So that is actually the duty of a real speaker, to impress transcendental ecstasy within the hearts of the audience. So obviously I'm not such a qualified speaker, but yeah, if we, like Devaki Mataji was explaining right how a speaker should be like a pipeline for the nectar flowing from Krishna, from the spiritual world. That's all a good speaker can do and should do. So in that way, yeah, even speakers who might not be so great by themselves, we can also somewhat impress transcendental ecstasy within the hearts of the audience. So yeah, a professional speaker cannot do this, whereas a self-realized soul who is engaged in the service of the Lord, when he is speaking, he has the potency to inject spiritual life within the audience. So, yeah, that's the power of speaking and hearing in the association of pure devotees, and thus, because in terms of Krishna being the supreme enjoyer, so pure devotee, he takes, rather than wanting himself to enjoy separately, he takes more and more pleasure in hearing more and more how Krishna enjoys so amazingly. Like that's, for it actually, even in our neophyte stage, it gives pleasure to hear how, like, because you could never, in material life, you could never even dream of that there could be a person who enjoys in such an amazing way as Krishna does. Like later there it's mentioned when Krishna's qualities are described, one of them is self-controlled, where the example is given that Krishna, he had obviously in Dwarka the most beautiful, exquisitely beautiful queens, 16,108. But actually they could not agitate the mind of Krishna, because rather, Krishna is also called as Rishikesh. He's the supreme controller of the senses of everyone. But still, he can choose to enjoy in that way and in so many other ways. So, yeah, I guess we are running out of time. I'll just, I just take this one point, which is very beautiful, to also prepare for tomorrow for Radhashtami. So there's one of the qualities also mentioned of the 64 qualities described by Rupa Goswami is obviously compassionate. And the definition of compassion given there is that one who is unable to bear another's distress. And so Krishna, obviously, he has that in perfection. Like one example is given by when he released the kings imprisoned by Magadendra. I think that's Jarasandha, isn't it? So anyway, another example is given when he knew that Bhishmadev was lying on the bed of arrows after the battle of Kurukshetra, and so Krishna, understanding that Bhishmadev was who had the power to leave his body by his wish, but who had a strong desire to see the Lord before doing that, and so Krishna, understanding that, he became very anxious to go there and see Bhishmadev, and it's mentioned there that when Krishna then began speaking, his eyes filled with tears, and he actually forgot himself in his compassion. So much compassion he felt for his pure devotee lying there on this bed of arrows. And so Prabhupada explains there then that that's why instead of offering obeisances to Krishna directly, the devotees offer obeisances to his compassionate nature. And who is that compassionate nature? It is represented by Srimati Radharani. So that is why we always approach Krishna through Srimati Radharani. We always see Radha Gopinath rather than just Gopinath. And so I'll conclude with that point. If there are any quick questions or comments, yes, Prabhu.
It's mentioned Swayambhuvasya Chamano Vamsha Parama Sammata. The line of Swayambhuva Manu was most esteemed. I would like to know if there is any significance in Mahatma Vidura pointing to Swayambhuva, or was he just inquiring because he happened to be first Manu?
Prabhu, those kind of questions, first of all, we won't be, if it's not given here, I mean, we won't know. It's like Guru Maharaj would say, if someone asks, like, why is Krishna like this or that, I think, like those kind of things, only the person himself will know, unless it's given by other great souls or by themselves. So we don't know, but we can speculate that. Yeah, I mean, as I said, they're discussing here at the start of creation. So then, they heard about Swayambhuva Manu and inquired about him before also. Like we saw, that's how the whole Varahadev pastime came. So yeah, we are just continuing on that, and obviously Swayambhuva Manu, he's special. He's a special Manu. He's the one who is mentioned among the 12 Mahajanas. So yeah, and as we hear then later in the chapter, it's entitled Conversation between Manu and Kardama. So when he then approaches the great sage Kardama, and then Swayambhuva Manu becomes in this way then the grandfather of Kapiladev, right? So, and his daughters are highly qualified as well, like here, Mother Devahuti. And so yeah, he's special. So, and it's mentioned here that therefore all the dynasty, all his descendants, they were also great devotee kings, and thus worth hearing about them. So yeah, that's all we can understand here.
Who were those devotee kings, famous devotee kings? Do you know a couple of kings' names?
Well, like Dhruva Maharaj, for example, right? So his Swayambhuva Manu's sons were Uttanapad and Priyavrata Maharaj. So especially Priyavrata Maharaj, he's a very famous devotee, who first was, fully renounced, who didn't want to become a king even, but then on the plea of Lord Brahma coming along with his father Swayambhuva Manu, and I think maybe even Lord Shiva, all great personalities appealed to him, Narad Muni, to take up that service. So then he took it up, and then we know he had famous pastimes, which is later described in the 5th canto. And and obviously before that, then in 4th canto we'll hear further on, especially Dhruva Maharaj and then other descendants there. Yeah, there are many. Okay, thank you for your attention. Grantarachma Bhaktam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.